Good morning. I have the honor, along with Anthony Morgan, of representing the victim in a horrible, gratuitous, and brutal attack, the victim being Dafonte Miller. I represent him and his family. We're here this morning to announce the next step in this truly depressing and tragic saga. And the next step is invoking the powers of the Office of the Independent Police Review Director to conduct both a conduct investigation, but also a systemic investigation of two police services. We have filed a complaint with the office yesterday at 5 p.m. We have copies of that complaint available today. The copies are redacted for the anonymity of witnesses, and that's it, and I mean non-police witnesses. All other information is there. And why do I raise that, and why do I say, along with my community coalition partners, that this is a very important step? The facts that underlie the case of the beating of Dafonte Miller are known to the public now. It is a stunning reality that these facts lead to a very strong conclusion, and far from the missteps or actions of the Durham and Toronto police being poor communication or lack of understanding of an SIU mandate. What is clear from the facts of the investigations, which I'll go into in a minute, is that this represented, in my opinion, a deliberate and intentional effort on the part of police authorities to conceal a crime by one of their own. The OIPRD complaint that we have laid lists in detail what, in the opinion of the complainant and our firm, is undeniable proof of deliberate efforts to conceal the crimes committed by Mike and Christian Theriault. The arrival of the Durham police on December 28, 2016, make quite clear that when they arrived on the scene, as set out in the complaint that we've attached, when they arrived on the scene, they knew that a Toronto police officer, an off-duty officer, Mike Theriault, was involved in the incident. They were advised of that by the 911 dispatch. A review of the 911 tape has Mike Theriault advising Dafonte Miller as he beats Dafonte Miller that he is under arrest. All of this happens at the home of an independent eyewitness and his son. This independent eyewitness happened to be a house at which Dafonte was banging on a door to get help, randomly. This independent eyewitness presented himself to the Durham police on the scene at the time. Durham police inexplicably didn't take an eyewitness statement from him. Instead, Durham police accepted an account of the events by Mike Theriault and his brother. What did they accept? They accepted that Dafonte Miller had beat Mike and Christian Theriault with a steel pipe. Dafonte Miller had catastrophic injuries at the time in front of the police officers. That is, he was bleeding heavily, his eye literally hanging out, fractures to his face, to his arm. The two individuals who beat him, Mike and Christian Theriault, didn't have a scratch. The Durham officers accepted this absurd account that the victim with serious injuries had beat them with a steel pipe. The Durham police, as we set out in the complaint, contacted the Toronto police and advised them of the serious injuries and advised them that their officer was involved. The Toronto police have announced, through a statement of Chief Saunders, that it was the responsibility of the Professional Standards Unit of the Toronto Police Department to determine if SIU should be contacted. It so happens that a longtime detective within that professional standards unit at the Toronto Police Service is the father of the two attackers, that individual being Detective John Theriault. It is also the case, and set out in the complaint, that John Theriault, far from being firewalled from this incident, actually had access to and communication with Durham investigators. All of this leads, in my opinion, to a very compelling case that steps were put in place to deliberately keep an independent investigation from happening. Now, why? Why on earth, with all of this, would we not be in a situation where peace officers are empowered, and I'm talking about the SIU investigators, are empowered to lay charges of obstruct justice against those for whom there are reasonable probable grounds to believe they committed the offense? Why, like any other case where people deliberately hinder and sabotage a criminal investigation, aren't these folks accountable? And the answer is simple. It is a combination of lack of teeth within the governing legislation. It is the reality of systemic discrimination that laws put in place to defend the vulnerable are the least implemented in our society. And it is a reality that while technically an SIU director could lay a charge of obstruct justice, you will never see that happen. We say it is high time that we talk about this honestly. I have had the honor of representing multiple families on multiple cases involving SIU. In 2003, we went to the Supreme Court of Canada in a case called Odavji. We successfully argued at that time that SIU needs to be respected and police can't abuse these investigations. We had to go back to the Supreme Court of Canada in 2014 in a case called Schaefer-Minty for two families, again about the police undermining an SIU investigation. In the first case I mentioned, it was the Toronto Police. In the second case I've just mentioned, it was the OPP. Here I sit in 2017 facing the same issue. Why do police have the power to charge with obstruct justice those who interfere in investigations, but SIU investigators do not? And the answer is that there is every reality that it will be enormously career limiting for a director of SIU to ever even contemplate laying an obstruct justice charge. This has to change. We have to equip our SIU investigators with the same powers other police officers. We have to create consequences for the police when they undermine an investigation the way, in my opinion, this investigation was deliberately undermined. There are no incentives for them to comply with the law. Why do I say that? Think of the exposure for John Theriault's two sons. Had the right thing been done that night and SIU had been brought in right away. Think about it. All of the incentives operate in the opposite direction. There is no law they're breaking when they undermine an SIU investigation. But if they get nailed, they face severe consequences. The incentives go in the wrong direction. So we say to you today, we have copies of the complaints available. We are asking the OIPRD to step in and conduct a systemic review. We say that it's high time that we make sure that it is safe for our SIU directors to lay the appropriate charges. Public mischief won't do it. We have copies of the complaints that we've just filed yesterday available to you that chronicle in detailed fashion what are clear steps that were aimed at protecting these two thugs. Thank you.